Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you want to help support the channel, all it takes is 2 clicks. All you gotta do is hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. But that said, our first story of the day is by a person with a lot of I's and J's in their name. You want me to write a fiction? Fine, but I'm making it a good one. I'm a machinery operator in an industrial setting. This means we have a lot of trade professionals on site 24/7 to minimize the impact of any breakdowns. On this particular occasion, I had a heated press shut down on me because it was reporting a temperature of around 3,600 degrees Celsius. The required temperature range is about 275. Since I have multiple stations on this machine and it's designed with failures in mind, I'm able to just run with that one station disabled with negligible loss in production. So I put in a mid-priority work order and pretty much forgot about it. Now, I'm not a ticketed professional myself, but since this is half the temperature of the surface of the sun, and I didn't appear to have been immolated alive, I put the problem down as a malfunctioning sensor. A few hours later in the shift, an electrician stopped by to get more details. I'm a bit of a curious person, so in the interim, I had looked up the melting point of steel, which is what the actual contact surface of my press is. Depending on specifics, it's around 1500. The boiling point is around 2900. I expected this information to be for personal amusement only. I was wrong. I described the problem to the electrician and showed him my reading alongside all the other stations, which were normal. Obviously, I informed him that a reading in the 3000s was not possible, but he disagreed and told me, maybe that's the temperature. Fair enough. I had to look it up myself, so I'm not gonna fault him for not immediately realizing this reading was nonsensical. I told him that steel boils at less than the reading I gave him, but he wasn't having it, and insisted that I put in a WOP, work order parallel, for the engineers. Officially, this just means the diagnosis was not immediately clear to the operator and creates a second tag with an alternate explanation so that when one tradesman closes the tag, the alternate or alternates are closed automatically. Unofficially, it would act as a black mark on my records, essentially telling the entire maintenance crew that I don't know my machines and don't know what I'm doing, and would result in more people questioning my judgments in the future. I don't have a lot of those, so I was already pretty annoyed that he was trying to push me around over this, but I can see where, from his point of view, it would seem reasonable to assume that a random person just happening to know the state change temperature for metals is hard to believe, so I was still resolved to remain reasonable. I went to the supervisor instead and told him the situation, expecting him to just tell the electrician I'm in the right and to go have a look at the sensor during our next breakdown or scheduled halt. Instead, he just told me to come up with an alternate prospective diagnosis and put in the WOP. Notably, he didn't actually specify engineer as the electrician had. I should note here too that the supervisor in question is an experienced welder, meaning he should know full well how ludicrous the demand was. Well, cue malicious compliance. Since this wasn't an urgent issue at any rate, I decided to take my time with the new work order. I reached out to manager to get the procedures for a work order that requires out-of-house services in government agencies. Waiting for those details meant that I would be taking this home and finishing it up on my own time, but at this point, I was invested. I actually went through drafts on this thing, but the finished product was a masterpiece of BS. Since 3,600 degrees would have sublimated my entire machine, I worked under the assumption that my lungs had been coated with various aerosolized metals that were blocking whatever little function my lungs could possibly retain after being exposed to apocalyptic temperatures. I explained that all the events since encountering the reading must therefore be hallucinations brought on by my failing brain as I succumbed to certain death. I made a point to detail how grateful I was that the delusion had apparently isolated me from the mind-melting agony my body must be in. I summarized my last will and testament in the vague hope that in my dying utterances it might actually be communicated to somebody still alive in reality. I recommended immediate contact with Environment Canada for disaster cleanup. I requested a specific funeral home, but specified that I did not wish to be cremated. I also made a point to mention by name the 2 people who had graciously informed me that my equipment could be expected to function normally in the temperature range of a sunspot. These work orders are the size of a postcard, and the actual request is typically 4 to 15 words. I handed this sucker in with 3 sheets of foolscap stapled to it. If it had actually been processed, it would have created a mountain of paperwork. Since I can't imagine Environment Canada reacting well to receiving a major disaster notification followed by, "Actually, sorry, never mind, one of our employees is being a butt." Predictably, I was hauled in to speak with management before noon that day to explain myself. I did receive a write-up, which I refused to sign and demanded a union rep on hand since I had no way to follow my orders without being ridiculous. They declined to bring one in, so that should be the end of that. The faulty sensor had been replaced by the time I got back to my machine. I mean, I don't know, if somebody's job is to kind of deduce why a machine's broken down, and they tell you, yeah, this machine reported a temperature that is not literally possible. In fact, it is so hot that it would melt anything around it. I don't think the first thing that would pop into my mind would be to respond, well, it could have been that hot. If you were put in a situation like OP, would you rat those 2 people out by including their names in as well? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Safer Work 801. Not my client, not my problem. I'm a social worker who's been working with the homeless population for well over 2.5 years. For the most part, I interact with people who show me high levels of respect. The street goes both ways. About twice a month, I interact with someone who tries to use anger, fear, and manipulation to get their needs met. Their harsh tactics used to work with me, and I would drop everything I was doing to attend to their rage-filled requests. We just hired this guy who does not do his job. He sits around on his phone and distracts everyone his whole shift. The first week or so, he shadowed the housing help desk, which is just a fancy word of saying open office hours for anyone in the shelter. The help desk is a freaking beast. You never know what you're going to walk into. Everyone dreads doing the desk. So the other day, I had a client who was needing EMS. I asked him to help me, and he said, "Not my client, not my problem," then started mindlessly scrolling through Facebook. At first, people respected him because of his credentials. Now everyone in the department sees right through him. My boss is starting to throw responsibility at him. He usually responds with, "I'm not ready." And my boss responds with something passive-aggressively empowering. "I believe in you, you have XYZ experience." So you may be wondering where these 2 things intersect. Today, I was looking for someone on my caseload. I walked by the housing help desk to see if he was hanging around in line. This client stops me and starts taunting me. "I see you helping other people and you won't even look at me. You treat me like I'm a bum, not a homeless person. Screw you, you aren't doing anything right now. You're just walking around. I need your help, come on." I respond with strong boundaries and refer him to my coworker. "I don't want to break the process. You're in line for the housing help desk. He'll help you when it's your turn. After all, it wouldn't be fair to skip the other guy in line. He'll meet with you soon." Pointed coworker through the glass. He shakes his head and gives me the "no, don't do this to me" look. Cue epic power struggle between the client and I. I keep referring him to the other worker. By this time, the other guy in line has had enough of his yelling and screaming and leaves. About 5 minutes pass, and I'm not budging. It's just escalating this client even further. The client my coworker's meeting with leaves, and the seat for the next client opens. I look through the glass, and my coworker is frantically looking up and down, pretending to be busy. Going through the file cabinet that nobody uses, pushing buttons on the copier like he's faxing something, opening stacks of paper and entering it into the paper tray. The client's getting so upset. "Screw you, dude, help me now. What the freak is that guy doing? Have him help me. This shouldn't take that long." I peep my head through the door and ask my coworker if he's ready. He stalls and stalls, expecting me to bend. I tell the client, "I'm not bending the rules for you. You have to meet with the case manager at the desk. I have 30 other clients I meet with while I'm not running the desk." I open the door. They say, "Hey, coworker OP, it seems like this guy really wants to meet with you. I've got to email over something to our boss. Can you help him?" I look at him. Not my client, not my problem. Less than 4 hours later, he's already calling places to follow up on his application. Sounds to me like somebody lied a little bit about their resume. I'm honestly more impressed than anything of how long this guy could kind of coast along doing bare minimum or nothing at all. And then only when their coworkers force the work onto them, that's when they get exposed. It's like, what has this guy been doing this entire time? This next story is by Here for the Jokes 13. malicious compliance in the deli, and a Karen slapdown as a bonus. I just witnessed the most beautiful piece of malicious compliance at my local supermarket. It has a deli counter where you take a paper ticket and wait your turn. There's a digital display that shows the next number, but when it's quiet, the staff often just serve the next person without advancing the number of the display, and it gets out of whack. Today was one such day. I pulled ticket number 87 and the display said 29. There were two people ahead of me at the counter, some guy who was apparently 85 and what turned out to be a Karen at 86. While Deli Girl's helping man 85, Karen launches into a tirade about the display being on 29, yelling at the young girl behind the counter that she was lazy and causing confusion. I just rolled my eyes and threw a look of understanding sympathy to the girl behind the counter as she finished up with guy number 85. What happened next was priceless. Karen sees number 85 leave and launches into her order. Deli Girl cuts her off with a saccharine sweet smile and says, "One moment please, ma'am," picks up the clicker for the display and clicks it over and over and over again until it reaches 86. It took quite a while. Needless to say, Karen was pissed. She glared at the girl behind the counter the whole time, while I stood there with a huge grin on my face. And the best part? She couldn't even criticize, because she was the one going off about it being wrong. After finishing Karen's order, Deli Girl tried to apologize to me for the delay. I told her she absolutely made my day. It's not often that you see service staff being able to deliver a customer service slapdown, but when you do, it's glorious to watch. The only thing better would have been if they went one by one like, click 30, is there a 30 out there? Number 30, no, okay, click 31, is there a 31 out there? 31. Just see how much that really makes the Karen get antsy. Our next story is by Important Dust 9675, following the military officer. So when my dad was younger, he was forced into military service for a year. Weird rule since many just moved on afterwards. This was during the Cold War, so of course there was a lot of tension. However, this didn't stop them all from having a laugh. So whilst they were on an exercise or something, their commander told them, "Gun over right shoulder," and then the whole group proceeded to throw their guns over the right shoulder. I don't remember the fallout, but I do remember him telling me that they had a reputation for pulling stuff like that. I definitely think it's good fun, but I definitely think the punishments that come with it are not going to be that fun. Enjoy the laughs while you got it. Our next story is by Clever username here. Do you want my job? To make a long story short, I used to work in a warehouse tracking tools and materials for a company that did welding and pipe fitting. We would occasionally sell our decommissioned fleet trucks, in pretty rough shape, for around $500. One day, I was told to take a tire off of one of these trucks and have a new one put on because it kept losing air. I threw the tire in the back of the truck and noticed a nail sticking out of it. Having a background in the automotive field, I knew this could easily be fixed, and I knew we had a tire plug kit somewhere in the warehouse. I went to the manager, asked if he knew where the plug kit was, to which he replied, "Do you want my job? Here, take my wallet, take my job." I got the hint, fell in line, and proceeded to take the tire to the very busy tire shop where I got paid to take a 2-hour nap while the company paid to put a $150 tire on a $500 truck. Maybe if you kept that manager worked up, you could even use all that hot air he was expelling to fill the tire back up. I guess sometimes it's easier and, frankly, nicer to just fall in line and do what you're told to do. And our final story of the day is by Solitary Tea Party. Sure, you can talk to a real American. Sheriff. I have a long background in customer service, over a decade now in various roles, and one thing remains the same no matter where I go. No matter where you work or what types of customers, clients, or patients you see, there will always be that one person looking to make your life harder. For this story, I'll call that person Bob. My job involved collecting a lot of potentially sensitive information on a variety of people, and the rules for how to do so are strict. As such, the team's divided into 2 groups, one of which, my group, has much more in-depth calls and generally falls to people with seniority in the organization. We all worked from a variety of locations and generally only kept in touch online. So one day, I log on and I begin to make my calls and begin preparing my records when a message pops up on the team chat. One of the people we need to get in touch with needs to be reassigned to a different worker? Why? because the coworker of mine had called to conduct the interview and had promptly been chewed out by Bob, who then hung up on her. The reason? The coworker had an accent, and Bob would only talk to a real American. Yeah, he actually said that. I was appropriately sympathetic and outraged at Bob hurting her, of course, but then I got a private message from my supervisor. Guess who needed to take Bob's file and call him? Me. Whatever, better me than her, I guess. So I called up Bob, fully expecting some kind of issue. Yep, Bob wouldn't give the info, but now he was just being rude about it instead of abusive. So I suppose he was never going to go through the interview. He had just wanted to get out of it and jumped on the coworker's accent as a way to refuse the first time. He'd heard her just because he could, and now the call wouldn't be completed anyway, even though he couldn't find anything specific about me to object to. Fine, the customer's always right. If he didn't want the call, of course I understood. In fact, as long as he could verify his date of birth and street name, common things we ask to confirm we have the right person on the other line before giving any classified information, I'd personally make sure no one from my team ever bothered him again. And I got it. Thank you so much, sir. I'll close this down immediately. Have a great rest of your day. Here's the fun part. I don't want to go too far into my job details, but have you ever seen those shows where some random dude walks in, asks if the main character is insert name here, and then says, "You've been served," and hands over a summons? The job does have a legal aspect, and I became that random dude the second he refused the call after we catered to his request for a new caller. And he'd just confirmed that I had gotten that refusal from just the jerk I was hoping for. No one from my team needed to make another call to Dear Bob, but that was because the record was being sent to a higher government office, so they could take more direct measures. These measures vary from person to person, but it's not unusual for law enforcement to get involved when a person gets their record elevated. Bob ended up having someone different to talk to. Maybe some face-to-face conversation will make him feel better. As for me, I don't even remember Bob's real name, and I hope my coworker doesn't either. All in a day's work. I mean, the bottom line to me is it sounds like in this job, if they don't want to work with you, you should be more than happy to be like, okay, thanks for confirming that, and then knowing you've just sent it up the food chain to somebody that is going to really make sure they can have that conversation with them. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.